Gas exchange in human. This is the skin surface or body surface. Indeed, our body surface cannot allow oxygen to move in. So we have to get a specialized surface. This surface is the body surface turned inward. What do you think this surface is in our body? You try to circle this part in this diagram. CO2 can be removed in the part of lungs. Let's look at one of the video to revise what we have learned.
In humans, the main organs responsible for respiration are present in the thoracic cavity. In the thorax region, the rib cage and a dome-shaped fibrous tissue, known as the diaphragm, are observed. Present within the rib cage are the pleural membranes, which enclose the lungs. The right lung is divided into 3 lobes: the right superior, right middle, and the right inferior lobe. The left lung is smaller and has only 2 lobes, the left superior and the left inferior lobe. Both the lungs are associated externally with small tubular bronchi, which unite and extend into the trachea. The trachea has incomplete C-shaped rings of cartilage, which prevent the tracheal wall from collapsing. The trachea leads into the pharynx, which is connected to the nostrils. As we breathe in air, the oxygen molecules enter the nostrils and travel downwards through the pharynx and trachea to finally reach the bronchi. From each bronchus, oxygen travels into the lungs. Within the lungs, the bronchus divides repeatedly to form bronchioles. Oxygen travels through these bronchioles and reaches the alveoli, each of which is surrounded by a network of capillaries. A section of one alveolus shows the presence of numerous alveolar chambers with pores. Blood, containing RBCs, is seen flowing through the capillaries. The oxygen molecules from the alveolus diffuse into the capillary and then get absorbed by the bluish-purple RBCs. This causes oxygenation of the RBCs, and a transition in their color from bluish-purple to red is observed. The blood moving into the alveolus contains RBCs and carbon dioxide molecules. These molecules are released into the alveolus. The carbon dioxide collects in the alveolar chamber. And then from the alveolus, it travels through the bronchioles into the bronchus, which finally reaches the trachea and is breathed out through the nostrils. So the process of breathing in air rich in oxygen is called inhalation. After the contraction of the muscular diaphragm, the lungs expand and the air rushes in, resulting in the inflation of the alveoli. During exhalation, the diaphragm moves up and the lungs contract. Thus, the alveoli deflate, causing the air to be forced out. This exhaled air is rich in carbon dioxide. This process of inhalation and exhalation is known as respiration, which is approximately 20 times per minute.
We have 2 structures which helps to remove dust. One is called hair. Can you try to circle the part of your body where these hairs can be found? This is the anterior part. Wow, we don't have hair. I think we don't have hair here. Only the anterior part have hair. So the nasal hair is in the anterior part of your nose. How about the other structure? We have another structure called cilia. Try to highlight the region where you can find cilia in your body. Cilia are these very small structures. So the cilia should be in the posterior part of the nasal cavity and also along the trachea, and then bronchi up to this bronchiole. We have the cilia along this region. this is the cross section of the trachea, okay, and then the inner layer of the epithelium contain the cilia and also the cells. This photograph shows you the cells, the epithelial cells here. Can you try to circle which one is number one? Here you can find the name. Circle the name, which one is number one. You write one next to the structure. This one is a cell with cilia. So this cell should be a cell called ciliated epithelial cell. You can see the color is lighter, okay? And this one secretes mucus. So this is mucus secreting cell.
Hair-like cells called cilia, as well as goblet cells, can be found in the lining of the respiratory tract called the respiratory epithelium. Goblet cells secrete viscous mucus that forms a layer to trap foreign material. The wave-like action of the underlying cilia mobilizes the mucus layer, removing the foreign matter and preventing it from entering the lungs.
So for the function, there are some keywords. Mucus secreting cells, they secrete the mucus. The keyword for this is to trap. The mucus is sticky, it will trap the dust or trap bacteria. The other one, the cilia will move. This cilia will beat. The beating of cilia will sweep the trapped dust away, either going to the throat or you cough it out. Last one is closely packed, so it can prevent the entry of bacteria. We have the vocal cord. Do you know where the vocal cord is? Here we have three structures. You try to circle which one contains the vocal cord. When vocal cord vibrates, you produce sound. This is larynx. So in this diagram, try to circle the part where the vocal cord is, which is the larynx. Which one is the larynx in this diagram? In man, it is the Adam's apple. Should be the enlarged part. The enlarged box, the base of the enlarged box, we have the vocal cord. So we will look at a video about the production of sound here.
This is my voice laboratory, and we're going to use what's called a flexible endoscope. This is called specifically a video chip endoscope. The essence of what we're going to do today, though, is use this flexible endoscope, which has a light on the end, and we're going to pass it into the person's nose. We'll pass it along the floor of the nose beneath the turbinates, and when we get to the back, we'll turn the endoscope around the corner and we'll be able to look at the person's vocal cords. Let's take a closer look. In this view of the vocal cords, the front of the neck is at the bottom of the screen. The vocal cords come to a point right below the tip of the Adam's apple. Because we're looking down from above, the right vocal cord is on the left side of the picture and the left vocal cord is on the right. In this view, the vocal cords are apart so that air can go in and out of the lungs, and we can see the first two rings of the trachea. In the back are two bumps, and these are the joints that open and close the vocal cord. They're sometimes mistaken for nodules in people who've never seen the voice box before. At the bottom of the picture is the epiglottis. It's basically a soft piece of cartilage, much like your ear, that flips down and covers up the voice box when you swallow.
Okay, so this is how you produce sound. And this voice box is somewhere here in the larynx, which is the top of the trachea, which hold the two vocal cords. Okay, and then we will look at the other structure, cartilage. Where can you find the ring-shaped cartilage? Yeah, this is the trachea. We have the ring-shaped cartilage. How about the bronchi? The bronchi also have the cartilage. not limited to trachea. How about the finest tube? Do they have the cartilage? No. Okay, yeah, only the trachea, and the thicker one, the bronchi, have the cartilage with it. Okay, yeah, so the cartilage is to prevent the windpipe to collapse during breathing. When you breathe in, there is the negative pressure. In this diagram, you try to write number or draw arrows of the flow of air, starting from the atmosphere and then go to the site of gas exchange. Try to draw arrows. Yes. Okay, how about the structures? The structure follow this: nose, nasal cavity, and then the pharynx. The pharynx is the junction between the esophagus and the trachea and your mouth cavity. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, yeah, very good. Then which part is the site of gas exchange? Site of gas exchange. You try to circle the part for site of gas exchange. Yes, the air sac. We can compare the air sac with the diagram I shown to you before. This is the air sac. What's the difference between the air sac and the diagram I showed you at the very beginning? If your body surface turn inward and this is your lung, which is having a smooth surface, what happens to the surface area? It would be much smaller. Okay, but in our lungs, we have a lot of air sac. Okay, a lot of air sac. This would increase the surface area for gas exchange. So you can draw a lot of air sac here. So they can increase the surface area for rapid gas exchange. So for these structures, after the air passes through our bodies, we find that the air is clean, moistened, and warm. Why? First of all, we have hair and also mucus. They filter the dust. We also have mucus and also water film in the lungs. This can moisten the incoming air, make it moist. Lastly, our lungs and our breathing tract, we have blood vessels which carry warm blood. They can warm up air. Okay, and then another difficult concept which students are difficult to handle is called pleural membranes. Try to outline the pleural membrane. Yes, so this is the pleural membrane. This one also pleural membrane. What are the relationship between these two membranes? This one line the surface of the lung. How about the other one? The other one, they are lying in the inner wall of our rib cage. Okay, our rib cage, we have the membrane. So this one, the lung is inside. Okay, so two membranes, the outer membrane and the inner membrane. The inner membrane is lying outside the lungs, and the outer membrane is lying inside the cage, the rib cage. Okay, so let's look at the animation. So when we breathe, the lung expand and recoil, expand and recoil. So it rub against the rib cage. You know, rubbing will produce heat. Okay, friction produce heat. If you breathe continuously, that means you rub your lungs continuously, then I'm afraid that your lungs will get on fire. Okay, so we have the fluid filling the gap between the two membranes. So we have the pleural membrane, which is airtight, and it secretes some liquid called pleural fluid, which reduces the friction between the lungs and the wall of your thorax during the breathing movement. This one is very important. This is an airtight structure. And why do we have the movement like this? Remember, this outer membrane lying inside the rib cage, just inside the rib cage. When the rib cage moves upward and outward, it will bring this outer membrane to expand.
The fluid in the pleural space provides mechanical coupling between the two pleural surfaces, and it actually allows instantaneous transmission of perpendicular forces between them.
What exactly do you mean by mechanical coupling?
The mechanism of mechanical coupling is similar to that which occurs, say, when a glass coaster sticks to the bottom of a slightly damp glass. You have the thin film of fluid between the two smooth surfaces, and this creates a partial vacuum that forces the two surfaces to cling to one another, yet allows the two surfaces to slide against each other. A similar situation occurs between the two pleural surfaces during breathing as the lungs expand and contract within the chest cavity.
This one represents the inner membrane. The other one represents the outer membrane. In between them, there is the pleural fluid. There should be airtight. If I use a syringe to inject some air into this layer, then this glass will fall down. They will not be stick together. So the two membranes, they stick together because this one is airtight, and the thin layer of fluid will hold them tightly. So what happens if we have more pleural fluid secreted? Some people may have some disease and they have many liquid produced here. Then we will find that the liquid will press on the lungs will shrink due to its own elasticity, so it will affect the breathing. Also, if the outer membrane is broken, air will leak into the cavity, and the lung will also collapse.
And of course, when the lungs are collapsed like this, what we need to do is take measures to re-inflate them. This is a greatly enlarged alveoli. Not an alveoli, of course, it's a balloon. But the principle is the same. The alveoli have elastic walls, so it takes active pressure to blow them up, but when you let go, it simply deflates because of the elasticity of the walls of the alveoli. The alveoli contain elastic tissue in their walls.
This is a difficult question. If the pleural membrane is punctured in an accident, why the lungs will collapse? Now, in this case, when we punch a hole here, air will leak into this cavity, making the outer membrane and inner membrane separate. The lung will recoil because it is elastic. So this one, if we puncture or damage the pleural membrane, air will leak in. So this will increase the pressure in the pleural cavity. The pleural cavity has air. It is not vacuum. It is not airtight. Then the lung recoils due to its own elasticity. Let's look at the breathing mechanism.
At the end of expiration, barometric air pressure and alveolar air pressure are equal. Therefore, no movement of air into or out of the lungs takes place. Inspiration begins with contraction of inspiratory muscles to increase thoracic volume. This results in expansion of the lungs and an increase in alveolar volume. The increased alveolar volume causes a decrease in alveolar pressure below barometric air pressure, and air flows into the lungs. At the end of inspiration, the thorax and alveoli stop expanding. Airflow into the lungs causes alveolar pressure to become equal to barometric air pressure. Because the pressures become equal, no more movement of air occurs. During expiration, the volume of the thorax decreases as the diaphragm relaxes and the thorax and lungs recoil. This results in a decrease in alveolar volume and an increase in alveolar pressure. Since the alveolar pressure is now greater than barometric air pressure, air flows out of the lungs. Air continues to flow out of the lungs until alveolar pressure becomes equal to barometric pressure.
this is the breathing mechanism you have learned in Form 2. So for breathing in, it involves intercostal muscle contract and then the ribs move upward. The diaphragm muscle contracts and the diaphragm lowered. So the two actions together will make the volume of the thorax increase. When it increases, the lung expand. So the lung expand first before air move in. When the lung expand, it becomes bigger, and then the pressure decrease. Higher atmospheric pressure will force air in. In exhalation, intercostal muscle relax. The ribs move downward, inward. And the diaphragm muscle also relax. It returns to the dome shape. So in this case, the lung will recoil to a smaller size, return to a smaller size. So the lung volume or the whole thorax volume decrease. This decrease of volume takes place first, and then the pressure increase. This would push air out because the air pressure inside is higher than outside. So in examination, how would it appear? This is an example. Describe the breathing action. Okay, the breathing action. Let's bring air into the lungs. That means describe breathing in. So breathing in, we have the intercostal muscle contracts. In this case, the rib cage is raised upward, or the rib cage move upward and outward. The next one is diaphragm muscle contracts. Okay, and then the diaphragm muscle flatten. These two actions will increase the volume of the thoracic cavity, and then the pressure decrease, and it decreased to a level that it is lower than the lung pressure. Lower than the atmospheric pressure. This would force air out. Okay, this is a standard question in which most of the students in HKDSE performs well. So remember the keywords: the two muscles. Intercostal muscle contracts, raise the rib cage. Diaphragm muscle contracts, flatten the diaphragm. This increases the volume of the thoracic cavity. Hence, the pressure drops below atmospheric pressure. So if you just say pressure decrease, no mark. You must say pressure below, drop below atmospheric pressure. This is the fourth mark. Okay, you can watch this video first. This is the air sac, and then oxygen move into it, and carbon dioxide move out of it. In this diagram, can you circle the letters which has the highest carbon dioxide content? Blood carry all the carbon dioxide here. Okay, and then the carbon dioxide will flow into the air sac. So this part has highest CO2 content. When it flows along the bloodstream, it will have the carbon dioxide removed into the air sac. So there will be less and less carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide decrease.